Welcome to another edition of the Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. I am John Schmeelk. Thrilled to be joined by a friend of the program. You can find him now on the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays and Derek Klassen, two guys you've also heard on our show before. He is Dave Helman. Dave, good to talk to you, man. How are you?
It's good to see you. It's good to be talking NFC East. Obviously, I cover the whole league now, but this division is like my home. So it's like a warm blanket when I get to talk about Giants, Cowboys, Eagles, Commanders. Love it.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys remember Dave used to be with us a lot on our NFC East roundtables when we did those back in the day. He was a team reporter for the Cowboys. Now he's with the Athletic. You might have seen him on his stuff with Fox a couple years ago as well. So, Dave, let's start here. And I thought you and Derek and Robert did a great job in the Athletic Football Show, which I tell everyone on our podcast is the best national podcast you could find covering the NFL. All fan bases. This is week one. Look at the problem areas. Understand what could be a long-term issue that you have to deal with. But for the most part, weird things happen in week one. Give it a little bit of time.
Absolutely. I mean, we say that all summer long, right? It's like, hey, we're not going to overreact to the preseason. We're not going to overreact to the first game or two. And then, but once you see it out there on the field, especially, let's be honest, especially if it's not very good, it's hard not to get a little worried, get a little antsy. I mean, I live here in Chicago now. You saw what happened on Monday night. I mean, you try telling very excited Bears fans not to be worried about the way the second half of that game played out. So it's easier said than done. But yeah, by and large, we need a 2 to 4 game sample size before we're really going to form firm opinions.
You know, and the funny thing, I actually went to stats and I had them pull this for me. So I was surprised. I looked at it. So 17 teams finished with fewer than 200 team passing yards in week one, more than half of the league. I went back since to the year 2000. It happened this year, last year, the year before. Other than that, just 4 other times since the year 2000 has more than half the league finished with under 200 team passing yards in week one. And I think what we're seeing here, Dave, with the fewer preseason games, the guys just playing less, especially offensively, these passing games, it's going to take a little bit of time. I mean, just look at Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, like real deal Pro Bowl level quarterbacks. These things just start slow sometimes offensively, especially through the air.
Well, I think, and there's several reasons you can point to that, right? I mean, we did the whole thing last year, and it's bound to continue with the amount of too high safety play, the amount of teams that are like trying to take explosive passes away from offenses. So you combine that with the lack of a preseason, you combine that with, I'll be honest, like, with the exception of a few teams, right? Like the Eagles come to mind for obvious reasons, but there are very few offensive lines where you feel like they're working at an advantage against what some of these defenses are doing. Like not just the skill of the pass rushers, but the disguises and the sim pressures and the different directions things are coming from. You mentioned Joe Burrow, and I know he's incredible and we got to hold him to a high standard, but Myles Garrett just wrecked their whole thing on Sunday afternoon to the point where even he and that high-flying passing attack were struggling to find time to get anything going. So yeah, I think offenses are right now at least, and I think it was probably the opposite a few years ago where defenses were at a disadvantage for the first few weeks. But it kind of feels to me like offenses are kind of playing with a hand tied behind their back for at least a little while they figure out what they got.
Now, you were not on the Hangover show on Tuesday on the Athletic Football Show. That was Robert and Derek. And one of the games they talked about on that show was the Giants Commanders game. You guys did not touch that on your Sunday night program. And it's funny, and I always like to listen to the national shows talking about the Giants because, as you know, Dave, sometimes when you cover a team, you don't see the forest from the trees sometimes, right? You're so close to it, you kind of miss some things. But Derek opened up the show the same way I did on our programming on Monday, is I'm not sure it mattered who the quarterback was going to be in that game with the way the interior offensive line played and the way they couldn't run the football and the way they couldn't protect. I'm not sure who the quarterback was for the Giants on this week really would have mattered a ton, to be honest with you.
It's funny, and I think there's a natural excitement to see a first-round pick, and Jackson Dart played well in the preseason, so that adds to it. And so when the Giants struggle, that's going to be a huge part of the conversation, especially from outside the fan base.
Of course.
But at the same time, do you want to throw Jackson Dart into the situation that we saw on Sunday? I don't necessarily think that's a good idea. And I know JJ McCarthy weathered the storm on Monday against the Bears. It is doable, I suppose, but you want your rookies, typically your young quarterback, in as good of a situation as possible, and that just wasn't the case for the Giants. And I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but when we did the Giants preview, we talked about the splits with Andrew Thomas versus without Andrew Thomas. And I remember thinking to myself on Sunday where I was like, I don't want Jackson Dart playing for this team until Andrew Thomas is available. Like, I don't know if that's a great idea.
Yeah, and look, it doesn't get much easier, right? We got Dallas this week. We'll talk about that, obviously. Then you have the Chiefs at home. You have the Chargers at home. You finally get a little bit of a soft landing spot with the Saints. So they played pretty well in week one, to be totally
I
honest
was
with
gonna,
you.
they were not an easy out, which I actually around because like doing a national show, you got to try to have an eye on 10 different things on a Sunday. And the Saints game was one where, with like 8 minutes to play in the fourth, I was like, okay, well, at least this is a game that I can sort of look away from. Like, this is going according to script and probably not going to be a very interesting finish. And then 5 minutes later, I was like, never mind. The Saints are driving with a chance to tie the game. And that's the NFL in a nutshell.
Yeah, and look, they have, and the Saints defense, especially in that building in New Orleans, is never a fun unit or place to play for any team. So I think as you look forward here, Dave, what do you think of Abdul Carter? I know you guys are big fans of him in his limited preseason reps. Uh, did he match what you thought he would give you in that first regular season game?
I mean, yes, unequivocally yes, and I know it probably considering the preseason hype on Carter, and justifiably so, like between who he is as a prospect and what he did in the preseason. But if you listen to shows like ours, I think every time we talked about defensive rookie of the year, we were like, okay, yeah, Carter's probably going to win, but who else can we talk about? Like
That's the
sort of
boring one, right? Yeah.
right. That's sort of the expectation. And so maybe he didn't like blow up the stat sheet. And obviously the Giants lost the opener fairly comfortably, but he looked active. He looked disruptive. I mean, the guy, and I love the fact that the guy blocked a punt. Like he was so, he's the number 3 overall pick. He's the favorite to win defensive rookie of the year. You think about him as this guy that's going to get all these sacks on defense, but he is a rookie. Rookies play special teams, and to do so admirably, I thought was a fun wrinkle to his first game. So yeah, I mean, if that's the starting point, then yes, I'm pretty excited about where this is going. I don't think that's groundbreaking analysis, though.
Before we get to the matchup specifically against Dallas, let's look at the Cowboys in week one. It was a national game that now seems like it happened like 2 weeks ago. So much has happened since then. But we all watched it. What was your overall take on a team that you were very close to? And I'm sure you still watch them more than others. What do you think of the Cowboys in week one and their loss to Philly?
Moral victories aren't a thing in the NFL, and especially like with all the baggage that comes with Dallas, the Super Bowl drought, and they just traded Micah, and the fan base is as unhappy with ownership as I can remember them ever being, really. But I thought Thursday kind of felt like a moral victory. I mean, they were touchdown plus favorites. It was either 7.5 or 8.5 points by the time the game kicked off, which even with everything Dallas is missing, I was like, is that right? Like, do people really think this is that big of a mismatch? And of course, they played pretty capably. I thought the defense settled in. The run defense got a heck of a lot better in the second half. Some of the young edge rushers that they're going to be asking to replace Micah Parsons, certainly they didn't do that, but they looked active. They looked promising in the second half of that game. I thought they gave the Eagles very good offensive line, at least a little bit of trouble. And really, if I'm trying to sell you on the Cowboys in 2025, it's Dak Prescott winging the ball around to his receivers. And I got exactly what I wanted out of that. I mean, I thought Dak played phenomenally. Like the stat line did not do justice to how well he played. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb drops a couple balls that maybe changed the outcome. But for all of the negativity around the team, and I think coming into the year, nobody really took them seriously as like contenders in the NFC. I thought it was a good showing. And if they can build on that, then this is definitely a team that I think could make a little more noise in the playoff picture than I think people gave them credit for.
I want to get back to the Cowboys in a second, but first, you mentioned Lamb's drops, right? That was an epidemic around the league this year. You look at this week. You look at the Titans game. They had a million drops of Cam Ward. The Giants had a bunch of drops. You mentioned the drops from CeeDee Lamb. I think the game goes a little faster to the receivers. You got to worry about getting hit when you catch the ball. It's so much different than practice for the wide receiver position. That's something I think really showed up around the league in week one. A lot of drops.
I'm gonna sound like a drive time radio caller right now, but like, oh, okay, like the Titans are a great example. I mean, Calvin Ridley did have a couple of drops, but I don't think anybody's gonna try to sell us that Calvin Ridley is on the level of CeeDee Lamb. And then obviously the Titans receiver core behind him is kind of pieced together. The two biggest culprits in the Cowboys loss were CeeDee Lamb with his hundred and whatever $1 million contract, and Jake Ferguson, who just got paid $50 million over the summer. I'm like, guys, these have to be caught like this. I mean, the ball, if the ball touches your hand, you should catch it. And in a few of these, it did much more than touch your hand. Like, CD had one split through the palms of his hands. The one at the end of the game that could have changed the outcome landed in his breadbasket. Jake Ferguson, he didn't need, like, he bobbled it before he got hit in the end zone. I was like, guys, we make way too much money for these to at least not be closer to being catches. So, I mean, like I said, like Tennessee's a team where I'm like, well, yeah, this is a young team with a not so good roster. Like, this is the type of stuff that happens with the Cowboys. I'm like, you paid these guys. These guys are considered, I mean, CD's considered at the top of his position in the league, and Jake Ferguson is at least upper tier, like top 10, top 12 tight ends in the league. I need to see these plays get made.
The Giants Huddle podcast is brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans can get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. The Giants Foundation will host a 5K Racing Kids Run presented by Quest on Sunday, October 26th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds would benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative t-shirt after the race. Stay for a festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. The Giants Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation.
Huddle up, get in here. If you're lined up here, you gotta go over the middle with it to score.
Right. How do we make that happen?
I don't know.
But Citizens does.
Make sense of your money with Citizens, official bank of Eli Manning.
It's funny, our sideline reporter on our radio broadcast, Howard Cross, who played in the league for like 15 years, he has a great line when a guy drops an easy pass. He likes to say, Schmeelk, if that was a spear, it would have killed him. And that was like, and that was the CeeDee Lamb plays. Like, if that was a spear, he'd be dead.
Does anybody
right in the numbers?
Does anybody have better idioms than like old crusty football people? Like the stuff that they say, and they just say it like naturally, like a matter of course. And I'm like, where did you get that from? I'm gonna steal that.
No, please steal it. Howard would love that. Remember, Howard was in a locker room with Lawrence Taylor for a few years, so the stuff he heard, I can only fathom the stuff that he heard. What'd you think of the Cowboys' young offensive line in that game against Philly?
I honestly, and obviously it comes with an enormous caveat that Jalen Carter didn't play a snap in that game. But I thought they handled themselves really, really well. Like Tyler Booker's obviously the rookie. And again, it must have been nice for him to look up on the first play of the game and be like, oh, Jalen Carter's not going to be here all night. Like this is way better than I thought it was going to be. But I went back and looked at him. He looked very competent. He handled twists and stunts really well. He was dominant at times. You saw him pancaking guys on occasion. Tyler Guyton is the other one, second-year left tackle. I thought handled himself really well. Again, I don't know what that means because the Eagles are breaking in several new edge rushers. Josh Sweat's not there anymore. You're talking about guys like Jalix Hunt. Not to say that those aren't good players, but I just don't think it's with Jalen Carter not there. I don't know that it was a true test of how good they are, but lucky for us, we don't have to wait very long because I have a feeling Sexy Dexy, Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau, I have a feeling that's going to be a much stronger test than what they saw last week. So this one is circled very highly on my list just to see how this Cowboys line deals with a front like this.
Giants Huddle podcast brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. From game day celebrations to your everyday financial needs, Big Blue fans can get the most out of every moment with Citizens. Learn more at citizensbank.com/Giants. Dave Helman joining me in the Hack and Sack Meridian Hill podcast studio. Keep getting better. And Dave, we've been through a million of these games covering on both sides. When's the last time you saw a Giants Cowboys game in Dallas at 1 o'clock? I mean, it's very strange.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're so right. And it's sad what this rivalry is right now, if we can be real about it. Because I was thinking about that when we talked and I knew I was going to do your show. I was just thinking back on my time, and when I started with the Cowboys, it was 2013. So like Eli was there, Odell showed up soon after that, and the two Super Bowls were much more recent, and like that was the rivalry in the NFC East. Like right now it's been Cowboys Eagles for a couple years. I'm sure the Commanders are going to have something to say about that now that Jaden Daniels has shown up, but for the first like 5 years of my time covering the Cowboys, Giants Cowboys that was the one, and now it's kind of feels relegated to second class status, but maybe that'll change here over the next year or two.
Those Eli Romo games were just so much fun because both quarterbacks are so volatile, right? Like they could look terrible for a half, then all of a sudden they go nuts. Those were some unbelievable games going all the way back. I know you weren't there yet, but that 2007, playoff game that to win the Super Bowl. I mean, that started it, and it was just wild.
That was before my time, but it was an iconic NFL moment. Like, just as somebody who loves football, I remember watching that. And the Cowboys swept them during the regular season, and then the Giants did what they did in the playoffs. I mean, this was the stuff that the networks were like, we got to get this. This has to be the 3:30 game. It's got to be on prime time. So it kind of stinks to see it relegated to a 1 p.m. start, but man, I still get a kick out of it though. Like I said, like when I started, it's funny to think, because I mean, since Dak showed up, it's been rough for the Giants playing Dallas. But when I showed up, it was like, how are we going to beat the Giants? We gotta get past these guys. So it's been weird to see it sort of evolve into what it is right now.
Yeah, and to your point, the Giants have not beaten Dak Prescott since his rookie year in 2016. It's been a while. They've struggled against him. I know there is angst still amongst the Cowboys fan base as to exactly how good Dak Prescott is. What's kind of like the status of that? I know it's been kind of up and down a little bit, but are fans still, just because of the contract it's so big, are they still kind of thinking about it? Where are they with Dak right now in Dallas?
It is bizarre to see how Dak at this point is basically just living out Tony Romo's career. I mean, the parallels are insane, man. I mean, he showed up. He showed up and was very exciting as a young player, and everybody loved him. And then there were a couple playoff mishaps, and there's a lot of debate about what he's worth and should he get paid. And now he's kind of entering into the veteran part of his career, and yeah, I mean, not everybody is going to be happy. He's the quarterback of the Cowboys. So A, it's a huge fan base, so you can't please everybody. And then B, if you don't love the Cowboys, you hate them. So like, it's not like Dak has admirers among other fan bases, because nobody loves the Cowboys. Like it's a lonely aspect of quarterbacking that team. So no, I mean, there's always going to be debate about how good he is until he wins the Super Bowl, but it's crazy now, right? Cause I think he's 32. That sounds about, he's year 10. And now, so his offensive line is young, and his receivers are very young. George Pickens joins up this year. And now it blew my mind when they traded Micah, cause I was like, oh my God, this is just like when they cut DeMarcus Ware. And then when Romo sort of morphed into this MVP candidate over the last couple years of his career, he didn't have a good enough defense. The 2014 team, I think they had like 26 sacks the year that they went 12-4, and DeMarco Murray had 1,800 rushing yards, and they just didn't have enough on defense. So I was laughing when I saw that, where I was like, is Dak going to have like the year of his life, and the Cowboys just aren't going to be good enough on the other side of the ball for it to matter? And it is early, but watching him against the Eagles, I was like, he looks like he's ready to have a nice year, and I hope the talent around him is up to it.
All right, so let's talk about the matchup then. And I'm with you. And by the way, DeMarcus Ware went on to win a Super Bowl with the Broncos, and now everyone, the way the Packers played week one, who knows? Talk about this matchup. I know Schottenheimer, Brian Schottenheimer was there as the offensive coordinator, but boy, that offense looked a lot different in week one with Schottenheimer than it ever did under Mike McCarthy, with the way they ran it, some of the narrow splits, more motion, stuff like that. What do you think this is going to look like with this Dallas offense trying to go against the Giant defense with a really good defensive front?
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how much they lean into that, and that's been something Cowboy fans have been clamoring for years. Is more motion at the snap. Use your players to kind of suss out what the defense wants to do. It's not been a Cowboy thing for most of the last decade, to the point where they're like, people have conspiracy theories where it's like, is this like a Jerry Jones thing? Like, does Jerry Jones not want to play this type of offense, or does Dak Prescott not like to play that type of offense because he sort of likes to see the picture in front of him and not have a whole lot of stuff changing? So Thursday night was a pretty noticeable departure from what we've gotten used to, and I'm just curious to see how they maintain that. Like, Kevontae Turpin is not a guy that I expect to ever have this crazy like 8 to 10 touch game, but his speed is very interesting, and they can use it in a lot of fun ways, again, to like suss out what a defense wants to do or be a field stretcher to open things up underneath. So I'm curious to see how they continue to do that. I'm curious to see if they, for lack of a better way to put it, like if they're man enough to just kind of bow up and try to run right at this Giants front. I don't really know how good of an idea that is. Like I said, the interior of this offensive line looked pretty damn good against Philly, but that's with Jalen Carter taking an early shower. Do you want to do that against this front? Do you like, or maybe you should try just to see what you got, but how quickly are you going to pivot to that? And so I look at this as a game where I'd be asking my receivers to try to substitute a lot of running production, get the ball out on the edges, get the ball out of the tackle box early and often and quickly in the snap. So I'm curious to see how that works. But I wonder if they might just try to figure out what they got and say, all right, Tyler Booker, you got your audition against a lesser situation against Philly, but let's go see what you can do. So I'm curious to see what the game plan is, and if they just sort of try to avoid that fight altogether, or if they're like, hey, let's go see if we can go mano a mano against these guys.
My biggest concern from a Giants perspective here, Dave, is CeeDee Lamb's going to come out annoyed that he had a national performance where he had those drops. So I expect him to come out and play really well. And then we did not really see the full George Pickens experience. He had 3 catches. They're all relatively short. He did draw that one deep defensive pass interference penalty down the field. But he seems like the perfect receiver for Dak Prescott because he loves to just throw it downfield into tight spots, and that's what George Pickens does. Is this, in your opinion, the best set of weapons on the perimeter that Prescott has had? And how do you think the Cowboys might try to utilize him against this Giants defense?
So I think it is. And there was probably 1 year, 2021, Dak had young CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, and that was pretty damn good. So I think you have to mention that when you talk about like the best receiver groups. I also think 2019 he had Amari, Michael Gallup before his injury when he was a pretty good player, and they got 900 yards out of Randall Cobb at the late stage of his career. It's only week 2, so I can't say like this is definitively the best, but I think this has the potential to be the best pass catching group that Dak has ever had. I'm super high on Pickens. Funnily enough, I'm super high on him just playing his ass off for 4 months to get a contract, but you're already seeing people pointing out that like, oh, maybe the effort wasn't that great on snaps where the ball wasn't coming to him. Like maybe George Pickens needs to buckle down and work on selling his routes to make the defense honor him, work on blocking and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see how that goes. Like if the Cowboys saw that on tape and they're like, hey, George, this ain't gonna cut it, buddy. And you got to have a nice season if we want a big contract. So I got an eye on that, but I'm very confident that this could be one of the most explosive passing games in the league, especially if the offensive line gives Dak time. So I want to turn this back on you, and I'll be fully transparent. Robert and Derek, like you said, they did the hangover show for the Giants and Commanders. I have not been able yet to get a close eye on the Giants Commanders game other than just what I saw on Sunday. How did the secondary look to you? Because that's obviously, it's so easy to get excited about the front and all of that talent. And it was a nice first day for them for the most part. But what did you think about the back end? Because that is the huge question mark.
Yeah, well, I'll throw one thing out there first. I don't think Dexter Lawrence looked the same. He barely practiced in the offseason. He came off a dislocated elbow last year. So
That's
I don't think
it's completely valid, by the way. Like, I mean, as good as he is, it's totally not a surprise if he needs some time to ramp up.
Yeah, he did not look like himself. He got better as the game went along, and again, he didn't play a second in preseason. So I would keep an eye on that too when you have a chance to kind of get ready for this. You know, the secondary, I thought they allowed a little too much airspace. Here's the thing, and I'm going to talk to Paulson Debo about this tomorrow on the Giants Huddle podcast. I wonder how much Jaden Daniels' mobility affected how they wanted to play in the secondary, right? Because it's hard to play press man against Jaden Daniels. You turn your back, he can run. So they were in a lot of zone. They were in a lot of off. They played a lot of soft stuff. I didn't like that they didn't really reroute the receivers at the line as much as they should, even when they were in zone. You know, you can press, reroute, and then drop. Like, you can do that in zone defense. I didn't think they did it quite enough of that. And they did get beat with a lot of deep in cuts and dig routes. Jaden Daniels, I thought, was actually off a little bit. He threw the ball behind a couple of receivers over the course of the game. He missed Terry McLaurin on a deep pass down the left sideline, which he rarely did last year. So I thought they allowed a little too much airspace, but again, I wonder how much that had to do with just having to account for Jaden Daniels' scrambling ability, because it's so hard to play man against a team like the Commanders.
Jaden is one of those quarterbacks who, and it's infuriating to watch if you're a fan of the other team, because it's like, we're playing so soft, like we're giving him this big cushion. What are we doing? We're not, like, pressure him. And it's like Jaden almost forces you to play passive defense, because, yeah, I mean, if you play man, you can get burned. If you blitz and he gets out of it, which is a good shot to happen with a guy that athletic, you're going to get burned. And so it almost forces you into a position where you're probably not playing as aggressively as you would prefer. And fortunately for the Giants, I mean, Dak is an expert. Like, he's going to make plays from the pocket. That's what he does. But it is a more traditional type of game. Like, at this point in his career, I don't think you have to worry about Dak burning you with his feet, at least not more than once a game or so. So I think, like, this might be a more accurate litmus test, because this is going to be a very traditional looking offense, just from the standpoint of the quarterback's not trying to leave the pocket if he doesn't have to.
If you want to know how to manage 2 minutes of crunch time football, I'm your man. But if you're wondering about a long-term financial plan, you should talk to Citizens. Hey, I can also talk lawn care.
I'd like to learn about a mowing routine.
Yes, I knew I could help.
Make sense of your money with Citizens.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jaden led the NFL, not rookies, led the NFL in passing yards versus the blitz last year. So I think the Giants saw that, and they're like, maybe blitzing this guy's not the best idea.
Right.
But I do think the matchup that I'll watch here, Dave, in this game, and I mentioned the receivers for a reason. Paulson Adebo, I think you feel okay that he can handle his business. Is he going to be perfect or shut somebody down? No, but I think he'll be okay. Cordell Flott seems to have beaten out Deonte Banks on the other side for the second cornerback spot. He played around 88% of the snaps. Deonte Banks played something like 15 or 16 defensive snaps in the game. I don't have it in front of me, but somewhere around there. So how does Flott, who is still a little bit undersized, he's 6 foot, but he's probably only around 180 pounds, give or take. How does he match up against Lamb and Pickens? Because those two guys are physical players. They're physical receivers. They're on the bigger side. How does he match up against those two guys? That's something that I would keep an eye on in terms of how the Giants handle that. Do they put a safety over the top? Do they not trust him in man? Do they play zone? You know, I'm curious to see how the Giants handle that side of the field with their second cornerback spot.
Pickens made one play that kind of made me sit up in my seat against the Eagles, and it wasn't anything spectacular. It was like a comeback on the sideline, moved the sticks, but it's exactly why I'm excited about this partnership with Dak Prescott, because Dak Prescott, he's aggressive as hell. He is not afraid to throw into any window. He is not afraid to just put it on a spot and be like, yeah, like, it'll be picked if you don't do your job the right way, but I'm trusting you to. And Pickens, you know, he's got these go-go gadget arms, and he just plucked that thing, and he, like, the DB's swatting at him, and he's just vice grip on the football. And I was like, that is why George Pickens makes sense on the Cowboys, because Dak can just put it in a spot, and this guy's going to go get it no matter where it is. And so, yeah, I mean, if you've got the size advantage on a DB, I think that is something that I would want to attack if I were Dallas, where it's like, yeah, I mean, Dak Prescott, if he feels good about that, then like the coverage doesn't matter because he'll just put it in a spot where Pickens can make it work.
All right, let's jump to the other side of the matchup here. I'm sure Jerry Jones was happy that they did not allow a lot of rushing yards to Saquon Barkley, and that's like, oh, Kenny Clark justified the trade. See, we stopped the run. I'm sure he was very pumped up about that. And by the way, I thought they actually did a much better job against the run than we've seen the last couple of years. But what is this Cowboys front now? Are their best two players actually their defensive tackles, which is a weird thing to say about this Cowboys defense? And, you know, the Giants offensive line struggled in week 1 against the Commanders defensive front that also does not have any stars on it. Spare maybe Daron Payne. What is this Cowboys defensive front going to do? Are they going to blitz a lot? Are they going to stun as much as they used to? What do you think that matchup's going to look like?
It is. I saw the pressure numbers yesterday, like just players who lead the league in pressure. And I mean, Dorrance Armstrong, longtime Cowboy, really good player. So I'm not trying to throw shade at him, but I was like, oh, if Dorrance Armstrong's like leading the league in anything, that's not good. That doesn't say something good about what happened against the Giants or from the Giants' perspective on Sunday. So I've got an eye on that. You know, it was, and I think weirdly, I think the answer to your question is yes. Like I think Oso Digizua and obviously new Cowboy Kenny Clark are probably the best pieces of this front. I mean, two young guys that I thought had nice nights, and it started rough the first half. Honestly, the first half of that game did not look better. The Eagles ran for like 130 yards at halftime, and I was like, this looks like the same run defense, guys. And then they buckled down after halftime. I will point out, I don't want to be a hater, but I thought a lot of the Cowboys' success came after Landon Dickerson suffered his injury.
Sure,
and you know he got hurt and he eventually left that game, and all of a sudden the Cowboys were kind of kicking ass up front, and I was like, I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, I mean, obviously that's not the Cowboys' problem, but it's something worth noting. But yeah, Donovan Ezeraku, the rookie, I thought he had a couple nice flashes. And Marshawn Nealon, who was their second round pick last year, also just an impressively strong, disruptive guy. So those two are like the edge rushers to watch. But yeah, I think Kenny Clark and Osa are where it starts. And obviously just watching what the Giants offensive line looked like on Sunday, I think they probably feel super optimistic about their matchups and what they might be capable of doing. I haven't heard it. Have we heard anything about Thomas this week? Do we know anything about that?
Look, he took team reps in practice for the first time all offseason last Friday, Dave, and he was limited. So I think there has to be still some measure of buildup this week. I think seeing what he does on practice Wednesday or Thursday will be very important.
I mean, it's all eyes on that for me because, like I said, I mean, it sounds funny because, like you said, the interior of the offensive line was the culprit against the Commanders, but an all-pro player can just be a stabilizing force across an offensive line. So I will be eyeing that injury report intently because these, you know, the Cowboys pass rush, I don't think is one that you would lose sleep over compared to some other teams on the Giants schedule. But like I said, I'm sure those guys are watching tape of Sunday and saying like, yeah, we feel good about this. I wouldn't expect a ton of blitzing. Although, Matt Eberflus did start blitzing his corners in the second half.
Diggs and Bland came, right? Yeah.
But that's my point is like they had to bring pressure from weird places. And like, that is not the, you know, Eberflus came up under Rod Marinelli. He was on this Cowboys defensive staff back then when Rod was there. And like blitzing is not his preference. Like I think the corner blitzes came because they were like, it's either this or we don't pressure Jalen Hurts tonight. Like, what do you want it to be? So my guess would be they're going to try to win with 4 as often as possible. And maybe they get exotic if they have to, but that's never been Eberflus's preference if he doesn't have to. So I'll be curious to see how much of a push they can get with 4 before they try something else.
I had to laugh on that Trayvon Diggs blitz. He got into the backfield and he like didn't know what to do. He's like, I'm at the quarterback. What do I do now? I've never been asked to do this before.
He's like, you guys don't want me in coverage. I got to shout out Trayvon too, by the way. On our athletic football show preview in the summer, I was like, how are the Cowboys just expecting Trayvon Diggs to be himself? Like he had a very bad injury. He's not having a training camp. And when they activated him for the Eagles game, I was like, this is not gonna go well. How could you possibly be expected to cover Devontae and AJ and all that stuff in your first game back after not having a preseason? And he was on a snap count. Like, it's not like he went out there and just completely shut everything down himself, but just to play and play well in that situation, I thought was really, really impressive.
I agree, and I think that's the final matchup I want to ask you about here, Dave. Malik Neighbors, obviously not as productive as he would have liked in Week 1. You're an LSU guy, so I know you are a big Malik Neighbors guy. Are the Cowboys a big zone defense team now? Are they going to just straight up double team Neighbors? What do you think that's going to look like? Because I'm sure he wants to have a big game after a Week 1 disappointment for him.
I would expect it to be a lot more zone. Again, that's the tree that Matt Eberflus comes from. And yes, I would expect them to blanket Malik Neighbors as often as humanly possible and just make somebody else be the reason why they lose. And I mean, even with Trayvon Diggs playing well last week, there's not a corner on the Cowboys roster that I would want to man up Malik Neighbors on a regular basis and trust that it's going to go well. Especially maybe if Micah Parsons is on your team and you're confident that the ball's got to come out, that's a different story. But I don't trust that this Cowboys pass rush is of that caliber just yet. So I think that is a recipe for disaster. I would expect Dallas to cloud the field wherever Malik Neighbors is and try to frustrate him as much as possible. Man, I know Week 1 was disappointing, but and I am biased because that is where I went to school, but I think the sky's the limit for that guy. I'm so excited to see what he's going to do this year.
All right, so let's end on this. These Week 2 games are always tough, Dave, when you get these two 0-1 teams, and we know what 0-2 does to a fan base. It puts them into a tizzy, understandably so. Look, after you go 0-2, the path's very, very difficult. And I just think home opener for Dallas, the intensity in that building, and I think the desperation from both teams is going to be pretty palpable from the get-go in that game.
I do too, and I mean, this is not hard-hitting analysis, but I long ago I got to a point where I was like, I will believe the Giants beat Dak Prescott when I see it happen. Because
I get it.
When he's on the field, it just hasn't been a thing. I mean, I was there. I was there for the last time it happened. They beat the Cowboys 10-7 in that 2016 season, and Dak just didn't look like he had an answer for anything that they were doing in that game. And I think Odell broke a long one, and that was the difference. But since then, if Dak's on the field, more often than not, like, it's been a win, and more often than not, it's been a pretty comfortable win. I don't know that that'll be the case on Sunday. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to write off the Giants. I know Sunday was pretty rough, but Week 1 is weird. I think there's reason for optimism. I think there's plenty of reason for optimism if Andrew Thomas can get himself onto the field, but I do like Dallas in this game until further notice. The spread's 5.5. A lot of that is because Dallas, like you said, it's the home opener. It should be a pretty rowdy environment. I think, like I said, the fan base in Dallas is pretty upset with the team, but I do think that performance in Philly sort of galvanized people that, like, okay, like, maybe this season won't be terrible. So I think there will be some enthusiasm. I would pick Dallas by like 7 or 8 points in this game, probably.
I should point out, though, you were pretty bullish on the Giants before the season started. You thought there was a path for them to actually be much better this year, right?
I like everything about this. All right, everything might be a stretch. I like a lot about this Giants team, and I was really bullish on them. Honestly, I was super bullish on the Giants until I saw the schedule. And like you said at the beginning, it's Commanders, it's Cowboys, both road games. Chiefs after that, Chargers. So you're playing 3 playoff teams in your first 4 and a Cowboys team that would have been better last year if their quarterback hadn't gotten hurt. And then even after the Saints game, Eagles, Broncos, Eagles. I'm just like, I want to believe in this team so badly as a frisky sort of surprise wild card team, especially, again, it kind of hinges. Man, that sounds a little silly maybe, but like, it hinges on Andrew Thomas's health for me. Like, that offensive line just needs to be a respectable unit, and that's the easiest way to get it there. So I said that I mean, look at the Steelers last year. It was not high flying football, but like if you've got a good front and Russell Wilson can get his thing going a little bit, and the running game is at least respectable, I think there's a path here to like 8-9, 9-8 for the Giants. But then I saw the schedule and I was like, oh man, we're asking a lot here. Like that is a lot of good teams to open the season. So hopefully I hope they can keep it on track enough to where, you know, there's still something to feel good about when the schedule eases up a little bit in the second half of the year.
All right, let's close on this because both of us are living a similar life right now. One of the shows you host each week on the Athletic Football Show is with Dane Brugler. It's called Building the Beast, where you guys talk about college prospects. We have draft season. Well, I do the same thing with Tony Pauline, who's been doing the draft stuff just as long. And I love, Dave, and I'm sure you've done this before, where I'm watching a game on a Saturday. I'm like, wow, this guy looks awesome. You know, and you're all excited and you think you found somebody, and then you bring it up to Dane and I bring it up to Tony, and they're like listing their high school. Oh, he plays lacrosse on the side. Like there are no secrets with guys like Dane and Tony. They just know all these guys, and they're just an encyclopedia of knowledge, and it frustrates the hell out of me sometimes.
Absolutely. That happened this past weekend where two things happened. Number one, I see a guy and I get excited and I'm like, do you think he's pretty good? And like, you know, I don't want to be in love with a guy and Dane's like, oh yeah, like he's like a 6th round pick, you know?
Right.
And then the other thing is I'm like, holy crap, who's this guy that just made this play for Auburn? And yeah, he's got the bio ready to go. He's like, oh yeah, he was actually at Middle Tennessee State before that, and he made a position switch, and his parents wanted him to play baseball. I'm just like, what do you do during the summer? How do you already know all this stuff? I'm playing catch up with him, and it's very fun. It's great to have a resource like that available.
No, absolutely. And we'll have to, you know, get together and talk some college football later in the year too, as we kind of get week 3. There's not a ton of great matchups, but there'll be enough to watch. And as we get more information, it'll be fun. Dave, the floor is yours. Tell the folks where they can find everything that you're doing working with The Athletic now.
Yeah, so I am on the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays and Derek Klassen. I mean, we have something in the feed every day of the week, but we do a recap of every NFL Sunday that airs on Monday. We're recapping every primetime game this year. So every Monday night, every Thursday night, we will have something in the feed breaking down what we just saw from that particular matchup. And stuff throughout the week, as John just mentioned. I think our latest episode of Building the Beast is out right now. It comes
It's up.
It comes out on Wednesdays. So if you're a draft Nick like John and I are, you can come find me and Dane talking all the prospects, all the big college games, what to know for the coming draft. You can get all of that wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, and you guys got a fancy new studio now, man. You guys are in Chicago together. It's a whole nother level, man. Congratulations. That's great.
We're coming up in the world. I joke with them all the time. Like, I just signed up, and I'm like, man, I feel kind of guilty that I'm getting all this good stuff, but it's pretty nice.
Check it out, guys. It really is a fantastic show if you want to figure out what's going on around the NFL. That's Dave Helman on the Giants Huddle podcast, brought to you by Citizens, the official bank of the Giants. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time, everybody.